Okay, welcome back to the School of Why podcast. We have a great guest with us today, and that's Sara Kranz. And she is somebody who is living boldly. And we're going to hear a lot about her story and how she came about meeting her. So we'll bring her on now. Sara, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, doing well. And thank you so much for being on the show. I guess to kick it off, tell us a little bit about yourself and what living boldly is all about.
Oh man, we could go so deep with this. My name is Sara. I am an author, a speaker. I guide men and women through healing retreats in the Grand Canyon and Alaska. I'm also stepping into corporate work, helping corporations to really dive into the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health within teams. And I'm super. This work has, as I said to you right before I jumped on, it was a personal passion and purpose that came out of my own major traumas in life. And now here I am. I was a mom and a teacher, and I'm running a business. I'm an entrepreneur. So it's been really fun, and I love having fun doing it.
Wonderful. So, one of the things that I had been wanting to talk to you about, and I know it's something that you've shared openly about, and you and I both have gone through different traumas emotionally, and I think that your book, that's where our books are similar in that there's a lot of what I call strategic emotions. Some people call it emotional intelligence, but the role that emotions have played in the journey, the ups and downs, and how to harness that for good and use it. You've lived through multiple traumas. How did you find your why from all of this?
So I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit here. My
Okay.
first trauma happened at 17. I went through a really difficult time. I was raped when I was 17 and then had to face the trauma behind all of that. My why started back then, but I didn't even realize
Wow.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's the beauty of this journey now at 48, being able to look back and say, wow, all of this started so long ago and I didn't even realize it. Right. Because I didn't, the emotional side of it, the mental side of it, that physical side of it didn't fully align with me until I went through my second trauma at 40. And at 40, I survived, thrived from, I now like to say, there's three versions, I believe. It's the victim, the survivor, the thriver. And I'm in that major thriving space right now doing the work that I'm doing. At 40, I survived. My husband came out to me after 17 years of marriage that for 14 of them, he had been betraying me with men. And so the betrayal was deep, like relational betrayal trauma is the PTSD I went through was just so severe. But what it also did is it brought up my 17-year-old self, which is really, really key in this because my 17-year-old self, yes, it brought up the trauma of my past, but it also reminded me what I did survive through. Right. And so my why had started at 17 when I had also gone through so much trauma. It really took the major foundation and really set forth when I turned 40 and when I went through all of that. What I didn't realize with all of this was that nature was also my space of healing. So now what I do in my work is I guide people through nature, through forgiveness, the practice of forgiveness through nature. I go deep with them in nature, working through their emotions, their mental space, and physically and literally spiritually in all of the areas, but also somatically healing through the traumas that they have lived through and are living through currently. I mean, this whole world has been living through a trauma for, how many years now, right? And so being able to take this work and understanding that your traumas can become your why, the pandemic literally could become our why as a world if we choose to, and really set forth into the purpose of that and the passion of that. It has been the most interesting space from the age of 42 to 48 and witnessing literally now, even looking back and witnessing my own transformation through it. And it's all because I stepped outside of my head and dropped into my heart when I was in nature.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I've done a lot of work around that, some of that, especially in the last 5 years. I went through a divorce about 5 years ago, and I had to go through a lot of work around this idea that I was really compartmentalized especially when it came to like what I was doing at work, what I was doing at home. It wasn't that I was like doing anything bad or like, even in secret or anything like that. It's just that I really was living this like dual life and didn't even realize it. So I was in a ton of denial. I can imagine that you went through a lot of that as well, like trying to unpack the denial over the years, like because hindsight's 2020, right? And they say that the truth will set you free, but my experience is that not till after it's made you miserable. And
So
it's
good.
interesting because you talk about forgiveness. I know a lot in your content, in your work, in your book and stuff. Tell me a little bit more, because I know for me, forgiving others was easier for me to do than forgive myself.
Of course it
And
is.
so, yeah, so
Of
it
course it
wasn't
is.
until I forgave myself that I was able to finally live wholeheartedly. I don't think after the age of 5 or 6, I don't think I've lived wholeheartedly again until the last 3 years. And to get to that as an adult is no easy task, right?
No.
And you cannot do it alone. That's why I'm sure your retreats are really powerful. That's something I've really been I want to do one day is more of that type of work. I do a lot of work with people in the codependency space, and I'm a part of several 12-step organizations and groups around helping others and in turn helping myself. But forgiveness is always coming back, especially when it comes to resentments.
Mhm.
And so tell me a little bit about, obviously your thoughts on forgiveness, but also how can forgiveness be used in the corporate work? I know that you and I are both in a space where we're constantly having to be asked on like, how do we marry this to the corporate world, or the work people are doing corporately? And I know I'm still on a journey always to like kind of bring those two things together as opposed to pushing them apart.
100%.
So I guess go ahead and share a little bit about that, and then I have a ton of other questions. But
Well, it's interesting. So forgiveness is something that I didn't fully understand how I was healing. Like I was in a space of major, and I think that that's actually a really key point here, is understanding that the best teachers are those who have walked the journey. And so I was at a space back then, even at, 40, between 40 and 41, where I was like, do I even want to be on this earth? I had moments of, if I
mhm.
just take my life, all of this will go away because this sucks so bad. I lost so much weight. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't, my mind, was going through major, major trauma brain, which is a very, very real thing. And yet I have 3 kids. Right. And so, and somebody that I care about that had also been going through his own struggles. And so when we're talking about the unpacking needs to start with self first, right? Because you cannot take care of other people before you actually take care of yourself. Now, what I didn't realize was that my forgiveness and being in nature were marrying itself. It was like they were coming together because it was out in nature that I could step outside of the trauma and I could
Mhm.
actually see it for what it was, which is a human experience. And
Yes.
so forgiveness, when you look it up in the dictionary, forgiveness, the definition is actually to forgive and forget. But how the heck can you honor the most difficult things that you have lived through if you're also being asked to forget that they happened? And
Mm.
so that's where, when back in 2019, I did a TEDx talk. I did a TED talk, and we were trying to figure out, what does the TED talk want to be about? And I'm like, nature healing, all this stuff. And I said, well, maybe forgiveness. Because she was like, well, how are you survive? How have you come to this space where you could let go of the pain, the thing that has hurt you most? I said, well, I've learned to forgive. And I've had to learn to forgive, which I just realized during that time period of my life, I had to learn to forgive since the age of 17. I
Mm.
am not good at compartmentalizing, by the way. I suck at compartmentalizing. I am the
That's a
person
good
that
thing.
will, it is a good thing. And it's also a space of, I
A
feel
curse.
everything. I feel, it's what was that?
No, it's a blessing and a curse.
It's a blessing and a curse. Let me tell
I'm married to someone almost has the exact same thing. She does not compartmentalize, but
you.
she's
I
like
can't.
super authentic, but like to her own like demise.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I think that she's an empath. I didn't even know what that was until
I'm a
recently.
major
Yeah,
empath.
yeah, yeah. So you guys
And
would be like
I'd be
definitely
like
two
best
peas in a
friends.
pod.
Hook me up.
Yeah, and then
Um,
and everything is feelings.
yeah, it is.
I'm
It
still
is.
trying to maneuver that myself. I thought of myself as someone who was like really good at, like as a man with feelings and sensitive until I met her and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm like I'm an
Yeah.
asshole
No, I am
compared to
I am I am
compared to you guys.
I am one of those people where I feel it all. I feel it all. And that's why, when I'm climbing mountains, when I'm out in the middle of nowhere, like literally I will go on a trail for anywhere. Every year I go on a trail for between 7 and 22 days. And this year
Wow.
we're going literally into the mountains, the high Sierras where there's no trail, it's all waypoints. And I do that because that's my space where I can fully feel, where I can not take it home to my children, because it's a blessing and a curse being a major
Hmm.
empath like this. That's I love doing the work because this is what I do, and I also have to learn how to work through it myself as well. This is also the how the forgiveness piece came in, though, right? Like it was this space of I don't, because I am an empath and because I do feel so deeply, I don't want to hold on to all of this pain that is also not mine to hold. It was handed to
Yeah.
me. I can work through it. I can see it for what it is. And it's also a space of handing it, literally putting it somewhere else, right? And
Yeah.
not letting it control my life. And so when I started going through this space of what is forgiveness for me, it truly became the space of, and this is what I talk about in the TED Talk, it's about feeling it. It's about working through it. As Dr. Edith Eger says, we all walk through the valley of death and darkness at some point. Do not put up camp there. And it's
Hmm.
allowing yourself to
I
put the
hear
pain
that.
somewhere else, giving it somewhere else, placing it where it's not, you're not carrying it, right? Because we don't want to carry all that stuff in life. But the most beautiful thing is that the basis of forgiveness is love.
Hmm.
And so when we can look at people through the human eye and through the space of clarity from that area and not with judgment. I mean, we all have judgment at some place. I get it. And seeing it for what it is, right? That is how we actually create a better understanding with one another. And that's how we create better teams. That's how
Hmm.
we can see one another sitting in a boardroom, sitting in the corporate space, sitting in the classroom, sitting wherever it is, and see each other for humans and not as, for so many of us, enemies, right? And really it's like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. It is
Yeah, so
very.
community and experience are two things that are really like I'm very passionate about, and I think that they're the secret to really having a powerful human experience.
Yeah,
And so many times we get caught up with thinking that like knowledge or beliefs or all these different things are what matter, but really it's about experiences. Our own individual experiences is the priority when it comes to the work that we're doing and everything else. Because if I don't experience it, I will not have what I need to change, and I'm not going to have what I need for long-term forgiveness, like you said. So I like that you're talking about forgiveness, because I guess having forgiveness in all aspects of your life, especially forgiving yourself for the ways that you've messed up, is imperative for being able to come together and be a good team, whether it's at home or at work. Because I found that I was not actually that good at compartmentalizing. I thought I was, and I thought I had to do that. And people would see me at home or in my personal life and not even recognize me a long time ago. In my previous marriage, I didn't even realize how unhappy I was, and I thought everything was great because I just basically would do what I needed to do it over here, and then I would do this over here. And it's
yeah.
funny. I don't know if you have Apple. Do you have Apple TV?
So I don't watch TV. Sorry.
Okay, well, good for you. But if you did watch TV, some of the best content's Apple TV. And by the way, anyway, there's a show called Severance, and I'm actually working on like
I
a
love it.
content deal just around this show, because it took me by surprise. It's not even done with the first season. Excuse me. But it's phenomenal, the extreme picture it shows of compartmentalization and with work. These people
Yeah.
have volunteered to sever their brain when they go to work. So when they go down to the severed floor, they take an elevator and they forget everything that's happening on the outside world. And when they
Wow.
go back up the elevator, they forget everything that's happening inside at work. And this is like this, like, it's kind of a sick experiment that this corporation is doing. But what a powerful picture of what we think life and work and this whole like balance is supposed to be. And to
Right.
think that we can just sever that and then go to work. And then, I mean, I lived like that for a long time, not even knowing it. And I thought I was like, not compartmentalized. And I'm probably was better than most, but so many of us, we live our lives like where what we do at work, we think is somehow this other existence, and I'm still unpacking like what I'm learning from this extreme scenario over there, but not being wholehearted in every moment of my life is a problem, which means that I have to
I
be
agree.
wholehearted in what I do. And sometimes that means I got to make some hard changes. And I'm sure that's a big part of what you walk through. People want to be, everybody wants to be happy.
Oh,
Everybody wants to be happy, but the price of happiness, first of all, can't be bought with any currency, and it
right.
is extremely expensive. So tell me a little bit about how you help people find happiness and move forward outside these catastrophic experiences.
So, one of the lessons that I learned at 17 is that the most important relationship that you can have is the one within yourself. It is not with other people. Other people will not make you happy. They can be a part of your home, right? They cannot actually come in and be the person to decorate your home. In other words, the space of which you live in every single day with your head, your heart, your soul, your body. And so what I do with people is I go back to that space of who are you? Who are you? What are your gifts? Who are you in this world? How do you want to live? Who do you want to be? Right. And not only with self, but then with self first, but then with others. This is where the self-forgiveness piece really comes in, though, because I don't know about the rest of you or you, Frankie, but I am really, really hard on myself. If I
Mm,
mess up, I am the person that will take myself down to the core and beat myself up.
mm,
And really the space, and I really found that out post my trauma at 40.
mhm,
That's when I was like, how could I land in this situation? Now, realize I'm married to a person who compartmentalized in an entire double life,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
there's something else that I really do really poorly besides I don't compartmentalize is I can't hate people. I literally cannot hate people. It's just something that I've never been able to do. And
And do you think that's a problem?
no, I don't think that's a problem at all. I
Good.
think it's a fantastic thing. I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
it's a fantastic thing. However, what the space of it is that it's also it's one of those places where sometimes people find it easier to hate people than it is to take care of their own stuff, right? It's easier to get mad at somebody else rather than take responsibility for your own actions. And so when I had this whole thing happen with my former husband, I needed to get back to the place of who am I as a woman, as a partner, because we're still partners in parenting, as
Mhm,
a parent, as a sister, as like it completely took me down to the core of who I was. And it also took me back to what I learned at 17. The most important relationship that you can have is the one within yourself. And so what
mm,
I do with people is I take them back home to who they are. And it literally goes back to who are you as the core of the person that you were brought literally to be
mhm,
when you were placed on this
mhm.
earth. And it's a
Oh,
beautiful space.
I love
How
that.
can
Now,
here I just want to like how can you ask somebody else? How can you actually shine in your gifts if you are not going to go back to that space of who am I as a human? How can your gifts actually be brought in and best used in this lifetime?
I love it. So I actually am writing my third book right now. It's called Love the Weird. And the
Oh,
whole the whole thing is about the journey of really re-meeting your 5, 6 year old inner child, okay, before everything went to shit and before I had to be someone else. And I've done a ton of work around this. I've actually identified my inner child as actually a astronaut, inventor, cowboy, TV preacher.
oh my God, I love
So
it
that's who
so
I was
much.
at 5 years old.
The best.
So I try to embrace that on a daily basis. So I've got this whole belief system and experience around tapping into like my passion, and anyone who's stuck or trying to get started and get passionate about something. A lot of it is trapped with that relationship to the inner child.
Yes.
Do you do a lot of that kind of work with your team and at your retreats?
Yes.
Is that a
100%.
dumb question?
No, it's not a dumb question. You know what's really funny is that I was just literally having this conversation with somebody last night. Because like I've been called weird, like you're just like the butterfly. I've been called the butterfly. I've been called the little. I've been called like all sorts of stuff because I feel like I'm getting younger with age. And the reason I
Mhm.
feel like I'm getting younger with age is because I'm not carrying the stuff that adults do,
That's right.
and I'm playing not only when I am, out in nature and doing my thing in the work that I do. I literally play in the work that I do. I play in the
That's right.
conversations.
So
I'm
important.
playing with you right now. That's
Mhm.
play is one of the most underutilized tools that we actually can use as adults.
That's
And
it.
so even in our healing journey, I literally, when I bring people into my retreats, when we talk about this, I tell them the number one thing I want you to do is simply to set aside all of the mindset stuff, right? And play for a while. Just simply play. Play with your traumas, play with your healing, play with who you are, play with your values. Because that child within us was never afraid to fail. If you think about it, like how
That's
many
right.
times
That's right.
you were afraid to
It
fail?
was
You were like, oh, I'll
fear
try
wasn't
climbing.
brought in yet. That
No,
is,
it
man,
wasn't.
that is the number one thing. I was working with someone this morning, and we were talking about it, and he's just gripped with fear. And the fact is like that's not going to work. I have to get to a place where I step into and thought for a long time, courage was the absence of fear. It wasn't till I got down the journey a little bit to realize courage does not mean you don't have fear. It just means you step into it anyway. And
Yep.
so that is the biggest thing, is that if there's fear, there can't be love. And if there's not
Right.
love, you know, you're not going to be able to sustain this, not passionately. And so it's interesting what your tie into forgiveness, because that's really what happens when I don't forgive the person. Because I work with a lot of people that have been victimized like yourself at a young age with some sort of a abuse, whether it be sexual or physical or emotional, but a lot of abuse in the years of 0 to 12, 0 to 18, before you were an adult, and when you were more of a victim than we are today, right? As full-blown adults, the our role, we can only stay in this victim role for so long. But as a child, we legitimately were a victim. And see, all the work that I've done has been mostly focused on, okay, let's work through, who do I resent, or what do I fear? Why? What is it
Yeah.
affecting? Like, what instincts and emotions is it affecting? And most importantly, what's my part? And a
Yes.
lot of times what I've found is that people struggle with the my part when there's a sexual abuse as a child. Cause it's like, okay, what was my part? And some people will say really ridiculous things, which I won't even repeat, about like what someone's part would be if they get molested or raped. But the fact is that they didn't have a part. In that
Mm-mm.
moment, they did not have a part. They were 100% a victim of something absolutely horrific, possibly the most horrific thing other than being murdered that can happen to a human.
Right.
So today, it's like, okay, so we when we're doing this work with, and with mostly I work with men, you work with women, but when we get to that part, it's like, well, what's my part? And they usually, when they're doing their journaling and their inventorying during this work, they just leave it blank. And I said, that's good, because you didn't have a part back then. But today, my part
Yeah.
is finding a way to forgiveness,
Yeah.
not because what they did was okay. And most importantly, I think a lot of people think that if I forgive, I don't think you're supposed to forget, but I you aren't necessarily supposed to reconcile. So I think a lot
Right.
of people mix those two things up, that if I forgive, that means I'm going to have to reconcile. Have you experienced the same thing with a lot of people you work with? They're scared to forgive because they think they're going to have to go back to the relationship, or they're going to have to reconcile with this person.
Yeah, totally. And I do work with men too, which is really fun, by the way. I
Nice.
love working with men too. I love it. It's so much fun. It's interesting how many people you bring up a really good topic here, because for self-forgiveness, starting with yourself is so important. Don't give your power
Hmm.
away to somebody else before you take care of you first. Right. And so take the time and the energy and really sit with self in your own self forgiveness space. When you go through the self forgiveness phase and then you decide, okay, I'm ready to forgive somebody else, you're going to
Mm,
find it's actually a lot easier because you took care of yourself first.
that's right.
Right.
That's
And
right.
so when you're actually going through the phase then of forgiving somebody else, it's a daily practice. This is the other thing where people get a little bit, like they get tripped up on this. They think, oh my gosh, if I forgave them, why am I still mad today? If you think that
Hmm.
I don't get upset with my ex-husband for some of this, you're mistaken.
Right.
I mean, their anger comes up out of nowhere. And
Hmm.
the practice is in the daily decision and
That's
choice
right.
to
That's
step
right.
into.
Well,
That's the
and
actually practice.
100%. And I think people like just think that you're supposed to get to some level and then all of a sudden that's it. The fact is everything is circular. It's not a ladder. And so even though we reach these plateaus, there's still an ebb and flow. And what I try to work towards is, okay, I'm never going to not get upset about this situation, but
Right.
maybe if I can continue to shorten the time in which I'm upset,
Yeah.
by having tools of what I do when I get upset, right?
Yes.
And so I know that that's probably a big thing for you guys as well. And you know, when you're talking about the work you're doing, and do you find that there's a lot of people that come to you and they say, "I'm too old to be able to start over"? I mean, because I find that a lot. I was talking with someone today. The guy I was working with today is 61 years old, and he basically was like, "I just, tell me about it." But he was like, "I don't have the energy that you have to like start over. I don't think I can do it. I think this is it." And but I'm like, "Well, you're not even anywhere near close enough to retirement, or to just like sail off, into that sunset. So you're gonna have to do something, But so you've run into that."
Oh gosh, I had a woman who's 72 go on a retreat in April of 2021. And yeah, she was like, I'm 72 and I've been carrying this anger and all of this stuff. And it was really, because we were doing the Grand Canyon at that point. And I told her, I said, you know what's going to end up happening? You're going to be the first person out of this damn canyon because you're going to let everything at the bottom. And sure enough, she was the second person. The 16-year-old boy was the first person that climbed out. And we've worked through it. She's done so much tremendous work on forgiveness at that age. One of the people in my life who has been one of my biggest supporters, probably the biggest supporter next to my dad, is my mom. And she has been the space for me, and she's 83 now, where forgiveness, we've worked through our own major space of this, because I believe, for her, there was so much that was taught of forgiving and forgetting, right? Like you had to forget to forgive. And so it's given us this space of me teaching her now that forgiveness is not necessarily what she was taught, right? And so even at 83, she's working through this space. I got a tattoo actually with my mom's handwriting, forgive, because
I love it.
Yeah, because it means so much to me. I don't believe that we have any age that is okay, well, I'm too old, or even I'm too young. I think it's something that we need to be teaching our children at a very, very young age, the space of self-love and of forgiveness and of accepting responsibility where we need to, and choosing to do better next time, better than what we did the first time, right? That's that process of continuing to learn and then not being afraid to fail.
100%. It's funny. I have to get you a copy of my book, but there's 10 steps in the book, and the first 5 steps are basically, how do you get started? Figuring out what your why is, or your mission, your personal mission. What's it going to cost, and is it worth it? And then committing, believing, then building a team, and then starting. Right. So the first 5, I usually will do a workshop, and that's kind of like, okay, let's get this ball rolling. But the second 5 are all about what I call the lifestyle steps. These are the steps that are like learning how to be patient and persistent, accepting versus adapting, and knowing when to do which one, because those are huge when it comes to like keeping my sanity and staying the course, turning failures into opportunities.
Yeah.
Remembering to actually celebrate your milestones instead of just barreling past them. And then the most important one, which is the 10th step, and this is really what keeps me going in life, and what I believe all of our purposes, and that is, how am I giving back my life to help others?
Oh gosh.
Especially in areas that I'm not getting paid to do. Like, that is the true gold that can't be bought for long-term fulfillment. And that's why it is so exciting. Like seeing, like, you're actually, you were talking earlier about before the interview, like, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years and you're just getting into it. But the thing about it is you're getting into it the right way. You're actually, I've worked for 20 years to get to the point where I now can do more of my purpose as my living.
Yeah.
As opposed to like doing it as like a hobby. And so you're actually on to something. You actually get to skip some of the years of the trying to discover what my why would be, and how I was going to bring all that together. which is not easy, right? And that's a journey. But all that to say is that it's a daily process, turning failures and opportunities, patience and persistence, accepting and adapting. Those are all daily principles and practices that I have to do no matter how old I am,
Yeah.
right? And I can start at any point because it's always today.
So may I add something to this, please? I think
Yes,
one of
please.
the things that we really also tend to forget is awareness and literally listening to the signs that are given to us along the way. Like what jams you? What makes you happy? What literally like fires your soul up? And, at 17, I had this bizarre hit from above. I just remember it like it was yesterday where I was struggling. I was just really struggling in, the police wouldn't press charges. I tried. They said I had not enough evidence. I mean, there was so much behind this story. People turning their backs on me and me still choosing to go to college. It was a really difficult time. And I had a moment where I remember thinking to myself, you're not going to be the only one. You're not the only one walking this. And all of what you're walking through is going to become a book someday. So keep doing what you're doing and keep taking the next right step. Right. And
Mm,
so even at 17, I was a college student at the time. And I remember where I was driving down the road. What I didn't mention in all of this is that I actually got pregnant from this. And so and there's a whole, I mean, we're talking like major things happen behind the scenes with the social services and people making decisions for me without my consent. And I mean, it was
whoa.
really freaking ruthless. Okay. And I didn't even understand how wrong so much of it was until I went through my trauma at 40. And
Wow.
so, yeah. Oh,
23 years after that?
I knew that there was stuff that was wrong. I didn't, because understand, I'm also that I became a teacher. I kept my child. I was raising a son. I got married, like all of these things. And I was working through, I just like did what I had to do. Like I'd make the
Yeah.
phone calls that needed to be made. I had to step into a space of just like being my own promoter, my own, I had to validate myself, right? Because
Hmm.
nobody else was. My parents were. I have an amazing family. Point being, though, is that at such a young age, I learned so much because of my awareness with self, but didn't
Mm.
realize it, right? I didn't even realize it until I went through everything later on in life. And I think that one of the things that I've learned is that when we start to listen to the tapping of our heart and soul, when we start to listen to what's being said to us, right? That is our most important guide.
Yes. Yes. Trusting
That
that
trusting
intuition.
your intuition and
Hmm.
listening to it, even
Hmm.
when everybody else is telling you,
Yes.
no,
Oh
it's
my
not that
God.
way. Because the whole world can say one thing, but like you know, like you know, like you know, like you know. And so that's why I laugh at
I
I'm
can't wait
40.
for my wife to watch this episode. I mean, you guys are literally the same person. She
Well,
is so big on that. Oh my God. But sometimes I just want to say as a caveat, just you guys are very intuitive, okay? And most of the time you're right, okay? But sometimes you're
I'm not
not
always
right.
right. No, I'm
Yeah.
not always
Even
right.
though
And
it feels
and
right.
right,
But
right, right.
what I tell her is that if I have
You feel me?
intuition, if every time I have an intuition and I always think it's going to be right, sometimes you are going to be right. So then it's like, oh, I told you. But I will say that like at the end of the day, if you can't trust that, and of course get feedback from people that you
Right.
trust. So
Feedback.
you have
Of
to have people that you can bounce stuff off of. But
course. Your
in the
team.
end,
That's
like
your team.
you when you lose that, you lose a part of yourself. And I think that's where so much shame comes from in this world. I think so many people don't think they're good enough because they're doubting themselves, and some more powerful voice has told them something opposite of what they believe, and they've just gone with that because they didn't know what else to do, and it's tragic, you know.
Well, okay, so why do we start to not listen to it? I mean, like, I love this conversation. You're gonna get me going. You already did. Why do we stop listening to it? Do you know why we stop listening to it?
It's very uncomfortable to listen to it, and it's usually not what is the easier, softer decision to make? I don't know. Is that close?
We literally start listening to the outside world. We start listening to other
Yeah.
people.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
here's the thing, though, is
Mm-hmm.
why do we start listening to other people? Because we're afraid of our own failure. Why are we afraid of our own failure? Because we stop playing. Because this is what we're taught
That's
to do.
right.
And the
That's what
more
the
that
love the
we
weird
fail,
is. When
right, exactly.
it's the kid before everyone told me I was supposed to be a certain way.
Yep. Because your inner child is actually really
Mm-hmm.
key to who you are as an adult. And so when
Yeah.
you can actually step into that place of what's the worst that could happen? Like, give me a freaking break. What's the worst that could happen? Right.
Right.
Right. And so when we can step into that fear with the courage and say, okay, I'm going to try it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then if we do fail, what do? We can step into self forgiveness and say, okay, well, I'm going to do it differently this time. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's how we strengthen that voice within, that inner compass, that true north. That's why I'm going off trail this year. Because literally, like, for me, I love testing that. I love testing it. That's why I go climb mountains in the middle of the night, because I love testing that inner knowledge, that inner wisdom that we all have, and saying, okay, does this like make sense or does this not? Can I go this direction or can I not? Like, you know what I mean? It's the coolest freaking thing to play with.
I love it.
I
Well,
mean,
this is
I'm
awesome.
not always right, though. Trust me. I own
No.
that. I'm human.
Yeah.
Like, I am
Right.
human. I've
No,
screwed up.
I knew you weren't always right. I just was hoping you knew as well.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not always right too. For those of you who
I
are
don't want
wondering.
to always be right. What's the
No,
fun of
what's the
that?
point?
Like,
Yeah, exactly. What's the
what's the fun
point?
of that?
What's the deal? So to
Right.
play, you were talking about play. I guess before we close, tell us what you do to make sure you're being playful. Like, obviously, you're going outdoors and stuff like that. But when you can't get outdoors, how do you stay playing when you can't do the bigger outdoor excursions?
You know, it's really a space of my life that I've learned to embrace. So I used to be an art teacher, right? And
Okay.
so I taught my students at a young age how to play through their art. What I was also teaching them was how to play in the creation of your everyday, right? And so every day, like, I know some people have very, uh, different schedules that they keep to. I don't do that. I
Mm,
look at my day as a day of, okay, well, what am I going to create today? How am I going to play today? What's it going to look like today? I always have big projects. I'm like the queen of having so many huge projects at one time. Um,
okay.
which is great. And it's also, that's just how I've operated in the world. I think that the biggest play for me, though, it is getting outside. I don't really care what it's like outside. I get outside. I grab my paddle board. I go onto the Pacific Ocean. I paddle with whales and dolphins, and even in the middle of the night. And like, literally, I will be that person that's out there
Isn't the
paddling in the
sharks?
surf.
Is the sharks like a thing? Is that don't they come out at night? Is that something we should be concerned about?
No, it's nothing to be concerned about. They're there during the day too. Like, where do they go? Like, they're
See,
there
that's how you know I'm from Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? We don't I don't go out. We don't
2
paddleboard
nights
in that
ago,
dirty
I
water.
literally called my
Unless
father.
we have to go to Alabama or Mississippi or Florida to paddleboard. You don't want to paddleboard around here.
Listen, I was born and raised in Wisconsin. I'm not actually from California.
Oh,
I'm from a small farming community of 1,100
there
people.
you go. So you were paddleboarding in a pool at best,
I was paddleboarding in a
if they
pool.
had a pool,
Yeah, we didn't even have a pool.
right?
But literally, like, my play has been, I've learned how to play through outside, through nature and through that space of healing. And every day, though, I play in my writing, I play in my work, I play in my business, because why not? One of the questions that I ask myself is, when we met, I talked to you about, I feel like I'm going to live to 108 because I'm getting younger. I don't know what it is. Well,
Wow,
I do know it's the
congratulations.
process of, like, yeah, we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see.
you
I
may not
always,
want to live to 108.
I always use that, though. Like, when I'm 108 years old, if I'm 108 years old right now, am I gonna what would she say about the woman that
Oh yeah, you shared this in Florida, I think.
I shared this in Florida? Yeah,
That's your
I mean,
thing. Everything is your litmus test against a 108-year-old self.
it is. Would my 108-year-old self be proud of how I'm living my day today? Would she be
Oh
proud
yeah,
of
I got to
the
remember that one.
would she be proud? Would she be proud of how I'm actually working through the anger? Would she be proud of how I'm,
She would
handle it.
definitely want you to play more. That checks out. Wow.
She
It's
would.
interesting how the 108-year-old self and your 5-year-old self, I think we get along really well.
Yeah,
Ironically,
100%.
I just thought of that.
Ironic.
That's the
Uh-huh.
other person you got to check in with. Is your 5-year-old self happy with what you're
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. For me, it's my
Mm,
11-year-old self. I was about 11 years old when I had my first like major awareness
Trauma.
in nature. No, when I
Oh, in
like literally
nature.
that was my first like major awareness in nature. I
Okay.
remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah. Standing under a street lamp watching the snowfall. And I was like, and I was the only one out there. Nobody else was out at dark at night. And I was just like, wow, the universe is huge. And look at these little snowflakes. And how cool is this? Yeah.
I love it.
So
Well, we are just about out of time. I really appreciate your candidness and honesty on the show today, and I know everyone else is going to appreciate getting to share in this. And so, tell us, for those people that are watching or listening, what's the best way to connect with what you're doing? With the community and just all the things that if they want to learn more about your methodology for finding happiness, living with forgiveness and things like that. How do people find more about that?
find me besides in
Yeah.
the mountains or on the ocean.
Yeah, like
You'd be
if we
shocked.
can't spot you out of 7
You're
billion
actually
people
gonna
in
be
the ocean or in the
shocked how
mountains.
many people actually do cross my path in the mountains, and they're like, "Aren't you Sarah?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's me."
Nice.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's very funny. I meet a lot of people.
That's
I
funny.
invite everybody in. So you can find me on my website, sarahschultingkranz.com. I also am the author of Walk Through This, Harness the Healing Power of Nature and Travel the Road to Forgiveness. You can watch my TED Talk. That's on YouTube. You can find it through my website. I do a lot of stuff from one-on-one coaching to I do my nature healing retreats. I do water healing in Alaska. That retreat's filled up. There's a wait list. And then I also do land healing retreats, which is through the Grand Canyon. I'm running one actually with Florence Williams. She wrote The Nature
Awesome.
Fix and also Heartbreak. I'm so excited. We're doing that in July.
Wow.
Up in Telluride. So she's doing all forest bathing, and I'm doing all of the
Oh gosh.
energy
Yeah.
work. It's really
Experiential
cool.
therapy in nature is so ridiculously good.
It's so good. And anybody that is like at a space of should I try this? Should I step into my why? Should I like my purpose? What is
Mm-hmm.
that? Just do it. Oh, for goodness sakes, just do it. Because I remember when I was going through my trauma and I was reading Florence's book, and I just sat there like, she's so bright and she's so like, I'm looking at her, right? Like she's this wise and she's done the research and all this stuff. And now I understand what's going on with me. And now we're working together, right? And that's the power of
Mm.
stepping into the fear and knowing that you are worthy of the most amazingness in this lifetime. So we are unfortunately going to be stopping our Grand Canyon retreats in January of 2023. They're redoing the water pipeline through the canyon. And so it's time for, this is actually this is what I'm saying, awareness, a great time for me to stepping into more of the stage and the corporate work, which is why I am. So I've been wanting to. And so this is okay, it's time.
This is
Sometimes,
it. Yeah. Well,
sometimes
I'm excited about what you're doing in the keynote space because you and I are both in that community now, and
yeah,
so
exciting.
eh,
I love it.
so excited to hear about your summer retreats, and so if anybody wants to follow Sarah, obviously she's on all major social medias and on her
Instagram,
website,
Facebook, yeah.
and you have a book right on Amazon.
Yep.
What's
I
the
do.
name of it? The one that's out currently?
Walk through this. It's called Walk Through
Walk
This,
through this.
Harness the
Okay,
Healing Power of Nature and Travel the Road to Forgiveness. I do.
love it.
You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all over the place.
Fun.
So it is.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, this has been amazing, Sarah, and I look forward to getting to have you on the show again one day.
Thank you. I would love it. I can't wait to actually like jam with you sometime next to each other on stage stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
So fun.
All right. Well, this has been great. And until next time, you're listening to The School of Why.